Thank you for tuning in to Talk Radio 680 WCBM. I'm Kevin Battle, and instead of my normal program, I figured I'd give you a Christmas present. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Immanuel, which means God with us. For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Those words from the book of Isaiah. And that is the true meaning of this day. It is Christmas, the birth of the Savior by the perfect vessel of Mary. At this time of year, the sights and smells really put us into that holiday spirit, the season. It starts with Thanksgiving and really builds after that. We smell pine trees and cookies, the winter air. We see the sparkling lights and Santa Claus. Many try to cleanse their soul a bit and get into spiritual shape during Advent. Christmas is special. Special for believers and even non-believers. The traditions vary and the meanings vary. Oftentimes we look back on the good old days as a time of purity, a simpler time. But commercialism and faith are very intertwined this time of year, and especially for this very special holiday. This special date chosen long ago, December 25th, Christmas. Some celebrations last only a few moments. Some an hour. Others try to extend gatherings and festivities for days or weeks. They want to get the most of it, right? Try to make it last all year long. We also try to enjoy some downtime and take time to enjoy the pleasures. Those pleasures can be twinkling lights or a quiet time in a chapel or a small touch by a loved one near a tree as you remember Christmases past. Some of us are alone on this Christmas, and some of us are working. But that does not mean this day is spoiled. We each take a minute to ponder that star and this season and our past, our present, and our future. We are all stretched for time. Work, juggling family events this day and week, and looking at lights, ice skating, baking, decorating, traveling, sitting in traffic, shopping. Some spend way more money than we should, and maybe some of us are drinking a little more than we should this week. Or maybe we're fighting with loved ones as stresses and fractures in relationships come to the surface. Maybe we're just simply struggling to heal a broken heart. It was simpler in the good old days, right? Or was it? Is the Christmas season, the holiday season, the Hanukkah season any more stressful now than it was then? Is the message being lost more today than maybe it was when we were growing up? Are Christians and others honoring or celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ today, or merely giving gifts to others, simply forgetting why we exchange or host gatherings? It is a birthday celebration after all, right? Many non-Christians use this day to do some fun things themselves. Maybe go to the movies, get Chinese food. I know what goes on in Baltimore. My Jewish friends have filled me in. They say it is the best day of the year because all the Gentiles and Christians are home. No traffic, no lines, just one big party, one big club at the theaters. But was it simpler in the old days? No. Secularism and spiritual religious aspects of this day have always been intertwined and even collided. Names of Christmas pageants are altered to be inclusive, watering them down. But you'll still find a manger scene if you look, and you'll still understand the reason for the season if you read between some lines. The power of this celebration can only be partially hidden. We know it has been this way since the beginning. Everyone, governments, sports leagues, companies, have always wanted to take advantage of being associated with the birth of Christ, but without committing to it. They steal the themes and give time off for quote-unquote holiday. They change the lines of classic hymns to incorporate their company or franchise. Just think of some of the songs you've heard already. And it has always been this way. Since the wise men went on their honest quest to seek and honor the child, others tried to exploit that mission and that shining star. Those humble, awestruck magi were warned in a dream not to return to King Herod, as he intended to harm and exploit that child. In 1965, a time that many Americans look back as the fading parts of a seemingly innocent or romanticized era of the 1950s and early 60s, the true message was still being lost in all the hubbub and hustle of that day, until Linus nailed it in A Charlie Brown Christmas, as Charlie repeatedly tried yet failed to capture the true meaning of the holiday. He simply wanted to put on a play, only to be frustrated by the attitudes and interpretations of the day by his friends.
Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about?
Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about. Lights, please. And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them. And the glory of the Lord shone round about them. And they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God, and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
Who knew that the kid who refused to give up his blanket was the wisest among the Peanuts gang? Oh, maybe it was a simpler time. Sit back, relax. Over the next hour, we will talk about Christmas traditions, from feasting to festive lights to Santa Claus and the legends of holiday gift bringers. But first, grab yourself a plate and maybe a Kleenex too. We are invited to a Christmas feast fit for the King. I guarantee, regardless of your faith or your traditions, it will bring memories of those large, festive, fun family gatherings and dinners flooding back. And if you didn't have a big family to help you celebrate in the past, you soon will. I'm Kevin Battle. This is my Christmas Day special on the Talk of Baltimore, 680 WCBM. Thank you very much for joining us for this Christmas special on Baltimore's Talk Radio, 680 WCBM. I'm Kevin Battle. In our first segment, we talked about faith and the true meaning of Christmas. We also talked about commercialism of the season and how the message gets mixed at times. Well, coming up a bit later, we'll talk about Santa Claus and how he is able or needs to adjust his image as he travels over international borders, at times into unfriendly territory. We'll also visit a neighborhood that is all about the outward expression, the lights. But what about inside the home? Well, that's all about food, right? And we'll get into that in a moment. It's also about the tree. Do you have an angel or a star on top? And what about your nativity? Is it under the tree or on a display of its own? Remember when we were young? There were Christmas tree lots on every corner. Every gas station sold trees. People lived in trailers on tree lots for a month leading up to Christmas. You'd be hard-pressed to find a lot anywhere anymore. I saw a few of them, but not many. Many people have switched to artificial trees over the years, and some adults have never experienced the wonderful aroma of Christmas with a real tree in the house. And the economic downturn in 2008 saw demand for live trees plummet. So farmers planted less saplings over the next few years. And since it takes about 6 to 10 years to actually grow a proper natural Christmas tree, depending on geographical area, the species, and weather, there has been a natural Christmas tree shortage over the last few years, whether you knew about it or not. Many tree farmers, the places where you actually go to pick out and cut down your own tree, actually sold out of inventory early this year, many by the second weekend in December. Now, the shortage will last another 2 seasons, according to the experts, so plan your adventure or start or continue your tradition a bit earlier next year. All right, enough of the tree talk. Let's grab a plate and feast. Many families have Christmas traditions. Some large ones have faded over the years as loved ones have moved away or passed on, but the memories are still magical. My immediate family has a real small tradition that only a handful or two of us ever celebrated. Most outsiders do not understand it one bit. It is unique and nearly ended in murder. I was a youngin', and my mother was very busy leading up to the hustle and bustle of Christmas Day and Christmas Eve, actually. There was a lot to do at our home, and once Advent ended and we prepared for Christmas, our tree was not even up yet. They never put it up until Christmas Eve. We put it up Christmas Eve, and Santa Claus decorated it. My mother gave my father a very simple request on December 23rd, years ago, and that was, how about making dinner tomorrow? Perfect, no problem. Okay, my mother spent Christmas Eve morning baking and then went upstairs to wrap all the gifts and clean and get herself and her 5 kids, me included, ready for church that afternoon. My father, who was a general contractor, a construction guy, left home early that morning to finish one job and collect some payments and before bringing home food to fix for a meal, right? Well, you can blame traffic or conversation or ambition to finish a job in time for another family to have a magical, perfect home for their celebration. When my dad was done with his tasks, it was mid-afternoon, and most of the stores back then were closed. Where was he going to get the food? What was open? He spotted a Jewish deli and bought corned beef and rye bread. My mother's dreams of a fancy dinner were dashed as she turned the corner into the kitchen and saw the sandwiches on the griddle. Luckily, my dad could duck and cover and talk very fast. He survived. We ate quickly and headed to Mass. And I and my siblings have had a beautiful Reuben sandwich or two every single year since, whether I'm with them or not. 46 years later, we feasted on them together last night. Our tradition is small and very personal. I'm sure you have them too. Other traditions are worldwide and have been celebrated in homes for generations. They're a must-attend event. The Zito family is one of them. Selena Zito is an amazing national political reporter, a journalist from the middle of somewhere. You can catch her online. She travels the country, cultivating tremendous stories for the Washington Examiner and the New York Post, among others. Her books are It's Complicated, How Our Nation is Coming Together and Falling Apart, and the other one, The Great Revolt, Inside the Populist Coalition Reshaping American Politics. Selena is also an excellent cook and an expert on herding family members to enjoy the Feast of Seven Fishes. Merry Christmas, Selena. Thank you for joining us.
Merry Christmas, or as my grandmother would say, Buona Natale.
Well, thank you very much. So what did Feast of Seven Fishes? I have not partaken in it. My great-grandmother used to have it at her farm on Little Christmas, which was Orthodox Christmas, January 6th, the day my mother was born. But that feast has sort of faded over the time. Tell us about Feast of Seven Fishes and your family's adventure.
So the Feast of the Seven Fish is considered good luck in the Italian culture, in particular southern Italy and in Sicily, basically where the poor people are, which is where my family came from. And you are supposed to prepare 7 fish and eat it, and that will bring you good luck all year round. And it's a tradition that my great-grandmother brought here. My grandmother was a little kid at that time, but my grandmother continued that tradition. She would watch her mother make all the fish, and so when she passed away in 1976, there sort of was a lull. Nobody picked up the tradition, but I did in 1983. And I have been making it for my parents and my sisters and my brothers and now my children and now my grandchildren. And so there's about 30 people at my house. I begin buying the fish the day before Christmas Eve and start preparing everything the day before and that day. And there's so much preparation that goes into it, but there's also so much tradition. I mean, I can remember sitting on the counter with my grandmother covered in flour from all the breading because you fried a lot of the fish. And as I was looking at my grandchildren the other day, they now I know what I look like because they're all sitting in the counter and they're covered in egg and flour, but the look of joy on their face because they are helping to bring the feast to the family is priceless.
And those are memories no one will ever, ever forget in your family. That's amazing. Now, 7 fish. Are they 7 different kinds of fish, like sole and flounder?
Yeah, 7 different kinds of fish. Each year I mix it up. The past 2 years I've made this new dish that has just gone a little bit crazy. Everybody loves it. It's stuffed calamari. So I actually get 2 fish done in once with this dish. So I take the calamari and I set it aside, and then I chop up clams and onions and celery and a little bit of breading and Parmesan cheese, stuff it inside the calamari and bread it and bake it.
Wow.
And I have to say, we don't just have fish on Christmas Eve. We also have brajol, which is stuffed steak, which is cooked in the sauce all day, 8 hours. There's also homemade meatballs, homemade pasta, eggplant parmesan.
Now, you said 7 fish, calamari, clams. Are we in a gray area there, or is it just 7 things from the sea?
No, 7. It doesn't matter if it's from the ocean or from a lake.
Okay.
I also try to cook up perch because it was my grandma's favorite, and I usually this year I tossed it the way my grandmother did. It was a very simple dish. It was with butter, dandelions, and a little bit of egg, and tossed it with some fettuccine and some Parmesan or Romano cheese.
Wow.
So there was that. There's also scallops, shrimp, or for the people that don't eat any other fish. There are some people who just don't like fish, but so at least they get one piece of fish in the family. But there's also crab. I do a crab dip, homemade crab dip. Everything is homemade. I've been cooking for days, and nobody leaves the house not full. And it also happens to be my father's birthday. My father's 86th birthday.
Oh.
So we get to celebrate it. And so that includes dessert, of course, and tiramisu is his favorite.
That makes it all the more special. Happy birthday to your father.
Thank you.
Now, you cook for days and days and days, and so do a lot of other people. How long does this meal take to eat? Is it one, like my great-grandmother, they said it was one course after another. So you eat one, and then the next one's served. It was a little more, I guess, is it more buffet style for you, or what is it?
When people first come in, I have a real long table that serves 16 people, and that table is lined with what we used to call antipasta, but somehow it's become charcuterie. But there's all kinds of antipasta when people first come in, and they nibble on that. And then I set out another big long table and place all the food on there. We probably spent 2 hours eating and then drinking and then, have some homemade wine, and then we'll go back to eating a little bit more. Nobody takes a huge plate. It's really sort of fun in the way that we all just spend time enjoying the food, the aromas, but also having each other's company and watching the next generation. Like, there's a great joy in watching another generation eating this food and continuing this generation. We were talking last night about my grandfather. I mean, he was born in 1890, and his great-grandchildren are sitting at the table eating out of several of the dishes that they brought over from Italy and eating the same meals cooked with the same recipes. And that continuation, that legacy is as important as the food, I think.
Oh, absolutely it is. That is a tremendous tradition, and I'm sure you're bringing back a lot of warm memories for people listening today right here on WCBM. Selena Zito, that is tremendous. Congratulations on such a loving family. I'm sure no cell phone. Nobody's looking at their cell phone when they're at your house. They're talking. They're enjoying life. They're companions.
Yes, absolutely. And I've written about the Feast of the Seven Fish. If people want to check it out, it's on my website, selenazito.com. And I've written about others, the Feast of the Seven Fish, my own. And I mostly spend the month of December not writing about politics at all, but writing about traditions and communities all across the country. And so it makes for a nice read this time of year.
Absolutely. SelenaZito.com is the website. SelenaZito.com. Selena Zito, you're an unbelievable journalist and an unbelievable cook and a great mother and grandmother. God bless you. Merry Christmas to you and your family, and thank you for spending some time with us here in Baltimore.
Buona Natale. Thank you very much.
Selena also hosts a great party as well. And speaking of parties, Christmas is a birthday celebration. So what about the gift bringers? I'm Kevin Battle. We'll talk about the history and tradition of Santa Claus next on Baltimore's Talk Radio 680 WCBM. Welcome back to our Christmas Day special on Baltimore's Talk Radio 680 WCBM. I'm Kevin Battle, and in a few minutes we'll travel across town to visit one unique neighborhood that, after 88 years, is sadly missing one resident. But don't worry, her home is still part of that delightful celebration that Charm City has come to expect. Our quick trip will not be anything like the journey of the three kings and their caravans during that first Christmas, and it will not be the massive undertaking of that jolly old elf that spans the globe either. That journey is tracked by NASA and anticipated by children of all ages. After all, as the Christ child was in the manger, the Magi honored him with gifts, and we continue to give presents to this day. The hottest toys over the years? Well, in the early 1920s, it was Raggedy Ann dolls, Lincoln Logs, and Tinker Toys. A yo-yo was a hot toy in 1928. Finger paints were the hot gift in the early 30s. The 1940s hot gifts? The infamous Red Ryder BB gun. You'll shoot your eye out, kid. A Tonka truck was the toy to have in 1947. In the 50s, it was Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head or Silly Putty and Play-Doh, or hula hoops and Barbie dolls. In the 1960s saw G.I. Joe, Easy Bake Ovens, and Light Bright as toys to have. What was your favorite all-time gift that sat under your Christmas tree as a child? Think about it. Let those memories come flooding back. From St. Nicholas to Father Christmas to Santa Claus to the Three Kings. For thousands of years, all over the world, children of all ages have independently celebrated the winter gift bringers during this magical season. The techniques, the style, the methods, and imagery differ by region. However, the aim and the goal is the same, especially on this day: spread joy to the world and peace on earth. As millions prepared their homes for the birthday celebration and feast, let's take an adult journey through some of the history of the helpers with author of a great book, Santa Claus Worldwide, A History of St. Nicholas and Other Holiday Gift Bringers. Merry Christmas, Mr. Tom German. Thank you for joining us on this Christmas Day.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you as well.
I need to note that you are so dedicated to Santa Claus that you actually had an addition put on your home in order to showcase your world-renowned collection of gift bringers.
It is a little embarrassing, but you're absolutely right. We added another floor, what amounted to a fourth floor, in order to store all of the Santa figurines and ornaments and such during the year.
And your home/museum is in Asheville, North Carolina. You did live a while in Maryland for quite a few years.
Yeah, for almost 20 years I lived in Potomac, Maryland, and worked in downtown D.C.
Well, welcome back home to Maryland, even if it's
Thank
just
you.
for this interview on Christmas Day. On December 6th, Western Christians, especially the Anglicans, the Catholics, and Orthodox, observed the Feast of St. Nicholas. Who was St. Nicholas, and what is his story?
Well, there's a dispute, I would say, over whether St. Nicholas was a real person. Some people say, obviously, he was. Some people say, no, there's no way that somebody who supposedly lived in 300 A.D., as we used to call it, and had nothing written about him for 300 or 400 years, could suddenly have sprung to life, at least via biographies that were written in the 700s and 800s. So there's that question there. But the story of St. Nicholas that has been spread and popularized for hundreds of years is that he was the son of fairly wealthy parents in Myra, which is a town in what is now Turkey, that he was a devout and holy young man. He actually took up the post of bishop in Myra at a fairly young age, and that he was very generous and would spread his money around. The most famous story is him throwing bags of gold through the window of a home where the father did not have money for a dowry for the young women, and they were going to be forced into a life of illicit actions, I shall say, because of the lack of money. And Nicholas heard this, and he tossed the bags of gold through the window, and they almost magically landed in stockings that had been left hung by the fire. Now, that's a little bit too perfect a story to accept, but there are many other stories about St. Nicholas. He was the patron saint of roughly 50 different groups and was beloved in the 10th, 11th, 12th century and was credited for a number of miracles, particularly several involving boats that were going to drown, and St. Nicholas saved them. Now, that's him as bishop. In about 1200 or 1300 A.D., he assumed a life of gift bringer, where he would go from house to house and leave small gifts or coins for the good boys and girls.
Wow. We're with author Tom German. He's got a great book, Santa Claus Worldwide, A History of St. Nicholas and the Other Holiday Gift Bringers, from present-day Turkey and the Bishop of Myra and St. Nicholas. Let's move to Holland. I believe it was the Dutch that slowly moved the role of St. Nicholas to the Christmas celebration from the Feast of St. Nicholas and presenting gifts to loved ones in honor of the Christ child. And immigrants from all over the world brought that tradition to our soil, I believe. And so how did the image of Santa Claus evolve here in the U.S. from various parts of the world?
Well, each nation has its own story about its own gift bringer. So every nation or every region has a different gift bringer. In Holland, it was Sinterklaas. Sinterklaas was a dead ringer for St. Nicholas, but he was not St. Nicholas because the Dutch Reformed Church, after the Protestant Reformation, had banned Catholic saints. So there was no possibility of having St. Nicholas, so they made up a character that looked just like him, acted just like him, and they called him Sinterklaas. So he would come every November via steamship from Spain. He would ride a white horse, and still does, ride a white horse onto the land and gives out gifts to the children. In other regions, there are similar gift bringers, but as I said, each one's got a different name. In Germany, it's Weihnachtsmann. Weihnachtsmann is a descendant of the same situation as Sinterklaas. He was a figure that was not a saint, so that the Protestant Germans could have him as part of their celebration. And initially, he looked like a person that had been left out in the forest for years, all shaggy, dirty, wearing pelts and furs, but eventually became much more respectable and looked a lot more like our American Santa Claus. Now, our Santa Claus, actually, there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, about where he came from. There are a lot of people who say, well, he just developed over time as the American version of St. Nicholas. In fact, we can date the development of Santa Claus to two poems that were written in 1821 and 1823. In 1821, there was a poem called The Children's Friend, written by a printer in New York City named William Gilley. and it told the story of what is visually and in terms of his actions Santa Claus, and he was named Santa Claus. 2 years later, another New Yorker who lived literally just 90 feet across the street from Gilly, whose name was Clement C. Moore, got a copy of the book, at least we believe he had a copy, and he found the story interesting, but found the poem itself was sort of mean-spirited. There was a lot of time spent on whipping the young boys with birch switches rather than gift-giving. So Clement Moore rewrote the poem as a family-friendly and really enjoyable poem that we know today as The Night Before Christmas. And it was the night before Christmas that sort of finalized what Santa would look like, what he would do, how he would travel. And that image really took over and remained for hundreds of years, really 200 years, as the current bicentennial tells us.
Yeah, that's the Santa Claus we know and love. And as I mentioned earlier, as he crosses borders and time zones, things change a little bit. You mentioned Germany and the Protestants. What about last century? The Nazis and also the Soviets in Russia were atheist regimes. How did Santa prevail against oppressive, godless regimes? Did he have to go underground, or how did he adjust?
That is the magic of Santa. He can take on evil governments and prevail. They're a little bit different, but the basic principle that you can't put Santa down even if you're a wicked government like the Nazis or the communists of the Stalinist era in Russia. In Russia, the revolution that brought in communism was in 1917, and that was, in theory, an atheist regime. They outlawed any worship of God of any sort. That did not go down well with the Russian people, and they wanted to have the practices that they had enjoyed prior to the communists taking over in Russia. Initially, the government resisted it, but it eventually decided to compromise and to create a figure known as Ded Moroz, which means Grandfather Frost, who looks for all the world like Santa Claus, except that he tends to wear a light blue coat. And he is not the gift giver of the birth of Christ, but rather of the winter festival generally. And then they brought out trees and they put a red star on top of the tree symbolizing the Communist Party, and they called it a winter tree. And then they had celebrations on New Year's, in some cases January 6th, which is Epiphany in some cases, where they celebrated the Winter Festival. And the Winter Festival turned out to be very much like Christmas, but it was not a Christian celebration. It was a secular celebration of the Winter Carnival. In Germany, they had essentially the same issue, which is that when the Nazi Party came into power in 1932, they outlawed any sort of belief in God or actions that supported a belief in God. And therefore, they outlawed the concept of Christmas as the birth of Christ. But the Nazi rulers, again, in the face of tremendous opposition from the people, decided that the people could continue as German folk figures. And the figure we know of as Santa Claus became the German folk figure. Odin was the primary god of the German gods, and he became the primary figure of the German Christmas. So again, I don't want to say look the other way, but that might be the best way to describe it. While Christmas continued, they decided it was not a Christian or religious ceremony, but a atheist ceremony based upon the historic God.
That seems to be the way some communities in our region and our nation are sort of mimicking the regimes of the past, it seems like in some cases. You, Tom German, have thousands of Santa Claus figurines from all over the world and all different backgrounds. Real quickly, which era and tradition is your favorite?
That's an interesting question. I think I'm a little bit different than most collectors in that regard. If you look backwards, it was the late 1800s where you first start to find figures of Santa Claus, mostly handmade, small figures. Over time, they transitioned into predominantly plastic figures that were made up through about World War II. And then in the 60s, you had a lot of figures that were mechanical. They were made of a combination of metal and plastic, and they're probably toys we all remember as kids in the 60s, at least those of us who are old enough. My personal favorite, however, is a group of figures that really began to develop in 1985, when several artisans and artists in the U.S. began creating these just beautiful, incredibly handmade Santa figurines that could be 15 inches tall, 18 inches tall, even, as much as several feet tall. They would make the costumes out of real cloth or in some cases real fur. Those are my personal favorite because there's just so much craftsmanship, so much beauty that go into those. And importantly, everyone is different. Everyone is handmade, and it is its own figure as opposed to those things that were mass-produced in a factory someplace.
Author Tom German, your book, Santa Claus Worldwide, A History of St. Nicholas and Other Holiday Gift Bringers. Thank you very much for lending your voice to Baltimore and WCBM Radio. We truly appreciate it on this Christmas Day. Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, or as Clement Moore said, Happy Christmas to all of you as well. Thank you.
Before Santa Claus arrives, decorations must go up, and one Baltimore neighborhood gets into the Christmas spirit unlike any other. We'll make a quick visit to Hamden next. I'm Kevin Battle. This is Christmas Day on Baltimore's Talk Radio 680 WCBM. Thank you for taking the time to share part of your Christmas Day and celebration with us here at WCBM Radio. I'm Kevin Battle. We talked about some of the traditions, large and small, that people celebrate. Feast of the Seven Fishes. And then my family's very humble, small celebration with Reuben sandwiches. We all have warm memories of this season and this day, the celebration of the birth of Christ. We talked about the common theme of Santa Claus, regardless of what he's called throughout the world, and how it all ties into a very unique and American Christmas. And before coming to work today, I made one stop early this morning. No, I'm not Santa Claus. I arrived after the jolly old elf left the Baltimore region, and I made one stop to honor a beautiful soul in one section of town where all the neighbors mostly agree to light up your holiday season. Okay, I'm here on the Avenue, 34th Street in Hamden. Oh, what a block is what they're calling it, and it is quite a place. Everybody's heard about it. Many of you have seen it. The Christmas display, the entire block, every house on the block is over-decorated. It's a very festive atmosphere, and we're here with Billy. Billy lives here. His late Aunt Patsy was a lifelong resident of the block, and the home is for sale. Hi, Billy. Thank you for letting me in your home today. Merry Christmas.
Yes, hi. Merry Christmas. Nice meeting you.
And you decorated your portion of the block, your house? You decorated this yourself?
Yes, sir.
Does every neighbor here, do you get together and sort of get a theme together, or do you just over-decorate and try to beat the neighbor?
Yeah, no, you just pretty much do what you want to do with your house. Just everybody knows that, come Christmas time, get out decorations and, let's do it up.
It's a holiday tradition for sure for all of Baltimore. Everybody comes here. What's it like on a busy Friday night or Saturday night or even last night, Christmas Eve?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, the streets are blocked off. The streets, sidewalks are full of people. We have Mickey Mouse, the Grinch come, Santa Claus is on both ends, people selling personal things, hot chocolate, stuff like that. It's a pretty festive time on the weekends.
This is the best time of the year?
Yes, sir.
Your neighborhood is centrally located, very easy access to pretty much every part of Baltimore, but this is the epicenter. Everybody wants to live here, don't they?
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping now with the for sale sign.
Yeah, for sale sign, yeah. So this is the best time to get some advertisement for your property here. Just give everybody the address. What is it?
710 West 34th Street.
And it was owned by your late aunt who just passed away. Our sympathies.
Yes, and before her, it was owned by her aunt, and, it was passed along in family.
That's excellent. 2-3 generations, including you, living here. Your aunt lived here her entire life?
Entire life. She was born here, and she passed away here.
Tell us a little bit about her and how she liked to celebrate Christmas.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Christmas was her best time of the year. She loved Christmas. She loved decorating. She loves talking to people. Anybody walked by and happened to say hi to her, they were in trouble because she was ready to talk, and yeah, she would talk your ears off. But yeah, she loved Christmas. She passed away. She was 88, and before her aunt owned it. The house has been in the family for generations.
Would you like to keep it, or you're selling it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to keep it. It's just, I think that it's time to get rid of it. It was left to my mom, and they're ready to get rid of it.
A neighborhood like this, very festive. Your aunt probably sat on that porch for a good portion of her life, admiring the lights at Christmas.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and she sat on the porch a lot. She was out, especially with the next door neighbor, Jim. He'd come over with his dogs. Just about every day she was out on their front porch.
Billy, thank you so much for opening up your house to us, and Merry Christmas to you and your family. And enjoy Hamden and the Miracle on 34th Street. One last Christmas here with the family.
Yeah, thank you. Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks to Billy and his family for letting me into the home, and thanks to everybody in Hamden for being so festive and celebrating the season. It should be noted, it's not all just Christmas in Hamden on that block on 34th Street, the Miracle on 34th Street. Oh, what a block. Right across the street is the Hanukkah house. Just down the street is the Natty Bow house. The themes can vary, but the festivity and the fun and the friendship and the fellowship are unbeatable. I'm Kevin Battle. On behalf of my family and all of your friends here at WCBM Radio, Merry Christmas to you. Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. All the best to you in 2023. Thank you for being a part of our Christmas broadcast. And whether your celebration was large and festive or small and quiet, or maybe it was the first one you're celebrating with loved ones or possibly the last, God bless you all. And may the peace and joy of this special sacred day and this joyous season stay with you forever.